Good afternoon. Welcome to the Analyst. Today we'll be taking up 5 newspaper articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express and discussing them. The handout for the same will be available in the description of this video for your kind perusal. Please have a look at that. The first article that we'll be taking up is related to Pakistan, as the Foreign Minister of Pakistan has stated that his government will seriously examine the question of resuming trade ties with India. The second article is related to freedom of press, as the Supreme Court set aside an order by a Delhi lower court, which was also confirmed by the Delhi High Court, directing the news outlet Bloomberg to take down an article related to Zee Entertainment for being allegedly defamatory. The third article is related to Armed Forces Special Powers Act, as the Home Minister stated that the government may consider revoking the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The fourth article is related to Taiwan, and the final article is related to sustainable building materials. Now, the first article is related to Pakistan. The context behind it is that the Foreign Minister of Pakistan stated that the Pakistan government will now seriously examine the question of resuming trade ties with India. So we will be discussing the relations of India and Pakistan, focusing on the trade aspect, why Pakistan now wants to resume the trade ties with India, as well as a few suggestions. This is important in GS2 under the topic India and its neighborhood relations. So let's start with the issues in the India-Pakistan relationship, starting with the border issues. When we talk about the border issues between India and Pakistan, the first issue is related to Kashmir. 3 wars have already been fought between India and Pakistan related to Kashmir in 1965, in 1971 and in 1999. And India says that the issue of Kashmir has to be settled bilaterally between India and Pakistan, whereas Pakistan tries to internationalize this issue repeatedly. Whereas it is against the Shimla Agreement of 1971 also, as per which it will be solved as a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. Another aspect is the Siachen. The boundary could not be demarcated beyond the point NJ9842, which can be seen in the map also due to bad weather conditions. India had conducted the Operation Meghdoot. Now, because of the harsh weather conditions in this region, it is causing casualties to the army personnel also. In the past decade itself, about 150 soldiers have lost their lives. And the two countries have tried to arrive upon an agreement thrice in the past, last in 2006 also, but a final agreement could not be arrived upon regarding the Siachen. Another aspect is the Sar Creek issue. The Sar Creek is a marshy land between the Indian state of Gujarat and the Sindh province in Pakistan. Pakistan claims the entire Sar Creek, whereas India says that as per the maps of 1924-25, the Sar Creek has to be divided midway. That is, the mid-channel of the Sar Creek should be the international boundary, maritime boundary between India and Pakistan, whereas Pakistan claims the entire Sar Creek. Also, there is the issue of Gilgit-Baltistan. Gilgit-Baltistan, as can be seen in the map, is part of Jammu and Kashmir. But after 2019, Pakistan declared it as the 5th province of Pakistan, made it as a part of Pakistan, another province of Pakistan, which India has again disputed. Now, Sar Creek can also be seen in this map also, that India says that the boundary should be between, in the mid path of the Sar Creek, whereas Pakistan claims the entire portion, claiming the boundary to be on the Indian maritime boundary. There are some other issues also in the India-Pakistan relations. One is the asymmetric balancing. That is, Pakistan tries to use terror to destabilize Kashmir, because Pakistan does not have the military firepower to match that of India. It will not be able to match India in a conventional war. Therefore, it tries to build various terrorist launch pads from where terrorists can infiltrate into Kashmir, and it can utilize that as a bargaining point. In terms of economic ties, the export from Pakistan to India has been declining. It was about $42 million in 1995, and it has dropped consistently about 10% every year and has come down to less than $2 million now. And Pakistan is also an all-weather ally of China. This is a matter of concern for India because China has the policy of strategic encirclement of India through its China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or acquiring military bases or ports around India for a strategic encirclement, and also in the long run it will be hurting India. When we come to the trade aspect in particular, India had accorded the most favored nation to Pakistan ever since 1996. But Pakistan, despite having that MFN status, had a negative list in place of about 1200 products, that these 1200 odd products were not allowed to be imported from India. MFN status is a principle of WTO that if any WTO member is giving any benefit to any country, any WTO member country, then it will be giving that benefit to all other member countries of the WTO. But Pakistan, despite enjoying that, put in place a negative list. Also, the imports through the Wagah border checkpost through the land route, that were also limited. About 130 odd products were only being imported through that. Despite that, India has had a significant trade surplus with Pakistan because India exports cotton, organic chemicals to Pakistan, whereas India imports things like tropical fruits, dry fruits, mineral fuels and oils, etc. And after August 2019 in particular, the trade was completely paused by Pakistan with respect to India. Now they say that it was paused because India abrogated Article 370. On the basis of that, they paused the trade. But experts believe that there can be another reason also, because after the Pulwama attack, the Indian government had revoked the MFN status which was accorded to the Pakistan, and after that we imposed 200% extra duties on the goods which were imported from Pakistan, and because of that only Pakistan paused that trade. That may be another angle. Now, why does Pakistan want to resume the trade with India now? One is that there is a change of government in Pakistan. Although the Pakistani military remains firmly in control of the things, but still a new government may lead to a new policy with respect to India. Plus, there is economic crisis in Pakistan. There were devastating floods in 2022 in Pakistan. Along with it, there was food scarcity, energy scarcity, and there was a time when even Pakistani government ordered that the malls, etc., they will be closed after 8:30 p.m. in Pakistan to save energy, because energy was so scarce and it was running so low in the forex reserves. The forex reserves last year in Pakistan, they dipped to less than $10 billion. That is sufficient only for about 6 weeks of imports. Now, Pakistan also approached IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and various friendly countries for loan also. It sought loans from Saudi Arabia, China, etc. on friendly terms because it wanted money. Plus, if it is conducting trade with countries which are far off, then the long distance trade becomes costly. Therefore, if the trade is with a country which is right next door, then the trade will be cheaper. Plus, the direct trade will increase the efficiency, because indirect trade is already happening between India and Pakistan. It is happening through the route of Dubai. Pakistan's relationship with Afghanistan and Iran, they have become tense. It has become tense because Iran conducted military strikes inside Pakistan in the Balochistan region, citing terrorist habitats in that region. At the same time, Pakistan also countered with missile strikes inside the territory of Iran also, citing again the terrorist habitats. With respect to Afghanistan also, the relation of Pakistan has not been normal, because Pakistan has been now trying to push away the illegal immigrants from Afghanistan and trying to repatriate them to Afghanistan, because it itself is facing economic crisis. Now, what are the challenges to the normalization of trade with India? There are hardliners in Pakistan. There is the role of hardliners. For example, the PPP chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, he has always been giving strong statements against resuming trade ties with India. There is the role of Pakistani army also. It has always remained in command and in control of the important decisions which are taken in Pakistan. Plus, the Pakistan's demand with respect to Article 370 is a challenge, because they always say that the decision of the Indian government regarding the abrogation of Article 370 has to be reversed before any further talks can happen, but that is not going to happen. There is the issue of terrorism. Pakistan needs to put in place stringent measures to counter terrorism. As per our own External Affairs Minister Shri S. Jaishankar also, trade and terrorism cannot go hand in hand. Pakistan has to take steps to counter terrorism before trade can be normalized. Plus, Pakistan take into account various issues like airspace use. It denies airspace use to India, therefore the flights from India to Europe etc. they have to avoid the Pakistani airspace and take the long route, which further causes more fuel burn. And it denies the land route to India for exporting wheat to Afghanistan. Now, what are the few suggestions regarding resuming the trade ties with Pakistan? One is, before resuming the trade ties, we can explore ideas like building a security community in South Asia, putting in place peace mechanisms like what happens in the ASEAN region, that is the South Asian countries. They also resolve their issues through peaceful dialogue. There can be put in place measures like dialogue, confidence building measures like prisoner exchanges, sporting visas, religious pilgrimage etc. they can be promoted. For example, the Kartarpur corridor was reopened. The Bajwa doctrine can also be put in place by Pakistan because General Bajwa had focused on peace, on reconciliation of Pakistan with the neighbors, ensuring friendly ties with the neighbors rather than animosity, rather than confrontation. He was focusing on conciliation and economic growth, trade, and also rebuilding ties with US. We can also explore back channel diplomacy. We can also bring in other countries through backdoor negotiations or through the business partners etc. We can also explore the soft power diplomacy, for example, hydro diplomacy like the sharing of Indus Water Treaty etc. Ultimately, things will be resolved through a peaceful dialogue only. Now, the next article is related to freedom of press. The context behind it is that the Supreme Court set aside an order by a Delhi lower court, which was also confirmed by the Delhi High Court, that directed the news outlet Bloomberg to take down an article concerning Zee Enterprises Entertainment Limited for being allegedly defamatory. So we will be discussing the freedom of press, the constitutional provision related to it, as well as a few case laws upholding the freedom of press. This is important in GS2 under the topic Indian Constitution Significant Provisions. Now, freedom of press has not been explicitly mentioned in the Indian Constitution, but it is a part to right to freedom of speech and expression, which is contained under Article 19, Subclause 1, Subclause A, and it cannot be taken away by the government except on the grounds which are mentioned within the Constitution under Article 19, Subclause 2. That is, the right to freedom of speech and expression can be taken away by the government if it is affecting the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security of state, affecting the public decency, morality, defamation, or it is leading to an incitement to an offense etc. That is the grounds on which the freedom of speech and expression can be curtailed. They are mentioned within Article 19, Subclause 2. Now, the laws and regulations are also there regarding the freedom of press. That is, there is the Official Secrets Act 1923. As per this act, the government can classify certain information as secret, and any person who discloses that information can be punished under the Official Secrets Act 1923. Also, there is the Press and Registration of Books Act 1867. That is, the publishers have to get themselves registered with the government authorities and they can be punished if there is non-compliance. There is also self-regulatory mechanism, that is, there is a Press Council of India which oversees the conduct of the journalists. It also handles the complaints against the journalists, that is, it is a self-regulatory mechanism also which is put in place by the journalists. Now, why do we need the freedom of press? The press is the fourth pillar of democracy. It is a watchdog of democracy. it is important in safeguarding the democracy. It is a check upon the government so that the government does not resort to overreach. It does not portray anything which is beyond its powers, and it does not affect the rights of journalists. That is, they also have to be safeguarded. We, the citizens, we are also informed citizens. Now, how the Supreme Court has ensured the freedom of press, let's discuss a few case laws related to it. One, in Ramesh Thabar versus State of Madras case, the Supreme Court had observed earlier itself that the freedom of speech and expression, which is contained in Article 19, Subclause 1, Subclause A, it contains implicitly the freedom of press also. The press has a role. The role of press is in informing the public, is in promoting democratic values. Therefore, its freedom cannot be curtailed. There can't be undue censorship upon the press. In Brij Bhushan versus State of Delhi, again the court observed that the freedom of press can be curtailed only if there is an imminent danger to public safety. The danger has to be clear and present danger. There can't be any vague or remote possibility of affecting the public safety. Only then the freedom of press can be curtailed. In Indian Express newspapers versus Union of India, again the court observed that the expression freedom of press has not been used in Article 19, but it is comprehended within Article 19, Subclause 1, Subclause A. Therefore, the content that is published in the newspapers or the circulation of the newspapers, etc., that cannot be curtailed by the government except as per the provisions which are contained in the constitution. Otherwise, it will lead to violation of the right to freedom of speech and expression. In Siddharth Vashisht versus the State of Delhi in 2010, again the court observed that there is a distinction between trial by media and informative media. The media has the right to make legitimate comments. The legitimate comments cannot be curtailed. But if it is affecting the principle of presumption of innocence, then the freedom of press can be curtailed. In that case, it will amount to the trial by media. Because if the media is conducting a trial, it will lead to the building of common perception among the public that the accused is already guilty and the presumption of innocence will fail. In Manohar Lal Sharma versus Union of India case, the court observed that there is a link between right to privacy and freedom of speech. The media, which is the fourth pillar of democracy, that has to function in an independent manner, and if the privacy is affected, then it will lead to a serious curtailment of the freedom of expression by the press also. In Vinod Dua versus Union of India case recently, again the court highlighted the significance of the freedom of press as a part of the freedom of speech and expression which is contained within the constitution. Now the next article is related to Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The context behind it is that the Home Minister Shri Amit Shah stated that the government may consider revoking the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. So we will be discussing the main provisions, the contentious provisions of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, as well as a few Supreme Court judgments regarding it and the observations of a few committees formed by the government itself regarding AFSPA. This is important in GS3 under the topic Challenges to Internal Security. Now let's discuss first the significant provisions of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The government can declare any area in a state as a disturbed area. This declaration can be done by the governor under Section 3 of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. This declaration by the government can be done without the consent of the state government. The consent of state government is not needed to declare any area within that state as a disturbed area for bringing it within the ambit of AFSPA. Under Section 4 of the Act, if an area is declared as a disturbed area, there are certain powers which are accorded to an authorized officer, that is, certain powers which are accorded to an authorized officer of the army, that the officer can arrest any person without a warrant. if there is a reasonable suspicion that that person has committed an offense or is going to commit an offense which will affect the public safety. The officer can also seize any property or search any premises, that also without warrant. The officer can use force also or even resort to opening of fire. Even if that opening of fire or using arms leads to a death, that can also be done under section 4 of the AFSPA. Therefore, such wide powers, they are deemed to be draconian. Under section 7 of the AFSPA, if any officer uses his powers under section 4 and if it results is in any death, damage, casualty, etc., then for the prosecution of that authorized officer, prior permission of the executive, that is prior permission of the government, will be needed for conducting a trial against that accused, against that officer. Now, what has the Supreme Court observed regarding AFSPA because of such wide powers which are given to the armed forces? One, in Inderjeet Barua versus State of Assam case, the Supreme Court observed that this authority to designate any area as a disturbed area, this authority lies with the governor. But this authority is not an arbitrary authority. It has to be exercised in a judicious manner. In Naga People's Movement of Human Rights versus Union of India case, the court observed that the AFSPA as an act, it is constitutional. The constitutionality of the act was upheld, but the court made certain recommendations. It said that for declaring any area as a disturbed area, the state government has to be consulted before declaring it as a disturbed area. Also, it cannot be done in an arbitrary manner. It has to be based upon reasonable grounds. If any area is declared as a disturbed area under AFSPA, then a periodic review has to be conducted. A periodic review to check whether that area remains as a disturbed area or the situation has normalized, and this periodic review has to be done every 6 months. Plus, the armed forces, if they are using any force to check any people, then they should use only minimal force as necessary without causing any undue damage or casualty, etc. And there were a certain do's and don'ts list which should be followed by the army while exercising the powers under AFSPA. So these were a few suggestions given by the Supreme Court while implementing AFSPA, although the constitutionality of the act was upheld. Again, in 2016, while deciding upon a PIL, a bench of Justice UU Lalit and Madan Lokur observed that an enquiry has to be conducted in the encounter killings. If any people die in encounters while the armed forces are using their powers under section 4 of AFSPA, then an enquiry should be conducted to check whether there were true encounters or fake encounters. And there can't be any absolute immunity which can be given to the armed forces even if they are exercising their powers under AFSPA. There can't be absolute immunity against trial under CRPC. It can also be done. This was observed by the court. The government also formed various committees to give recommendations regarding the AFSPA. One, the Justice Santosh Hegde Committee, it observed that the exercise of powers under the AFSPA, it should be based upon humane things. It should be accountable, and there should be a time frame as well regarding the exercise of powers. Justice Jeevan Reddy Committee observed that the AFSPA should be repealed, but the government rejected this suggestion of the Justice Jeevan Reddy Committee. The committee also observed that the government can deploy army. If the state government requests the central government, then the government can deploy army for 6 months at a time, and that can also be a way out. Plus, the committee recommended that there can be the establishment of grievance cells. The grievance cells can be established in each district in the disturbed areas of the state. In Justice Verma Committee recommendations, the committee observed that the AFSPA is legitimizing the impunity for sexual violence because there were allegations that the armed forces, they were resorting to sexual violence also, and they were not being prosecuted because they enjoyed immunity from trial under CRPC. Even the second ARC had also observed that the AFSPA can be repealed. Rather, the special powers which are given to the armed forces to counter the disturbance to the public safety, to the public interest, etc. Special powers can be given as in under UAPA by adding a new chapter under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So we can suggest that rather than only focusing upon the security related measures, in the long run what will be needed is development, socio-economic development in the disturbed areas, and also winning hearts and minds of people to encourage that they are also following law and order. Now the next article is related to Taiwan. The context behind it is that China keeps on making claims regarding Taiwan and India has to act proactively to safeguard its interests. This is important in GS2 under the topic Effect of Policies and Politics of Developed and Developing Countries on India's Interests and India's Diaspora. First, let's look at the map of Taiwan. Taiwan is separated from China through the Taiwan Strait. It lies south of the East China Sea, and the South China Sea is to the west of Taiwan and Luzon Strait is to the south of Taiwan. In the east of Taiwan, there is the Philippine Sea. Let's recap the background story of Taiwan first. Beijing has been laying the territorial claim over Taiwan, citing the expedition of the AD 239 and the old claims that it has always been a part of China. It was ruled by China through the Qing dynasty till 1895. In 1895, it was ceded to Japan when Japan won the first Sino-Japanese War. Now, it was returned to China in 1945 after the Second World War. Now, when the Chinese Civil War ended in 1949, then the nationalists who formed the Kuomintang party, they fled to Taiwan and they started claiming the sovereignty of entire China while they were sitting in Taiwan. Therefore, China has always regarded Taiwan as a renegade province and it asserts complete control and sovereignty over Taiwan. Whereas Taiwan meanwhile has put in place its own democratic system, its own constitution also, and now it has formed its own armed forces as well and seeking international recognition. Now, what are the Chinese concerns regarding Taiwan? One is the Taiwan's president Tsai Ing-wen. Taiwanese president has moved forward and it is suspected that there might be a formal declaration for independence also. Now that will be a red line in China. That is, the China considers it as a red line which might even trigger a military response from China if Taiwan goes for a formal declaration of independence. Plus there is the growing ties between Taiwan and United States. Although United States has always been following a policy of strategic ambiguity, that is, it does not explicitly explain the relations with Taiwan. And there is the Taiwan's role in the first island chain also, which pains China, and the industry of semiconductor chips in Taiwan that is of immense significance. Going forward in the era of artificial intelligence, where chips will be of immense importance, Taiwan has an edge because the biggest Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company has an edge over the giants like Intel also in terms of chips fabrication as they have more expertise. There has been the role of USA also. USA had initially supported the nationalist government of Taiwan in 1949, although later on it switched the diplomatic recognition to the mainland China in 1979. But meanwhile, at the same time, the USA also enacted the Taiwan Relations Act. Through the Taiwan Relations Act, USA unofficially maintains ties with Taiwan and also supplies arms and ammunition to Taiwan for its security also, but meanwhile it retains the policy of strategic ambiguity. USA also supports Taiwan militarily and diplomatically and conducts frequent level and air patrols, and it considers it as a democratic partner and a counterweight to China, and it wants to counter the Chinese influence in Indo-Pacific. For that, it treats Taiwan as an ally. There are Indian interests also in that region. One is India is dependent upon South China Sea in terms of trade, as half of India's trade in the Indo-Pacific region passes through the South China Sea. Therefore, we want the freedom of navigation in that region. Plus, there are common security concerns that we share with Taiwan, because China has been assertive in that region. China's assertiveness we want to counter. Along with that, there are issues like keyboard warriors and the export of Chinese intelligence, etc. Then, in terms of democracy, we share common values with Taiwan, the common values of freedom, human rights, rule of law, etc. We can share technology with Taiwan for digital transformation, as Taiwan has built an startup ecosystem, and for nurturing the same in India, we will be able to gain experience. In terms of culture and promoting people to people contacts also, we need Taiwan to promote tourism, education, etc. Now, what are a few suggestions that this article also suggests? The article argues that we can go for international law arguments. That is, we can recommend the peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues through dialogue. India has always maintained a diplomatic relationship with Taiwan since 1995 in particular, which we can further maintain. And India can go for building narratives. Rather than going for aggression, India can go for building narratives which are pushing towards peaceful resolution of various issues, and India can promote coordinated diplomatic messaging, economic de-risking, that is diversifying the risk, and we can also explore military support to US forces in the Indian Ocean. That is what this article recommends. Now, the next article is related to sustainable building materials. The context behind it is that India is going through a construction boom, and we will be needing energy efficiency in residential buildings in particular, because they are a large consumer of electricity in India. This is important in GS3 under the topic Conservation, Environmental Pollution and Degradation and Environmental Impact Assessment. Now, India is going through a construction boom, as about 3 lakh housing units are constructed in a year annually. And 33% of India's electricity usage goes in this sector. Therefore, to check the India's energy demand, we have to make sure that the residential buildings, they are made energy efficient. Also, as per the forecast by the India Cooling Action Plan, the cooling needs of India are going to rise 8 times from 2017 to 2037. Therefore, to check that rise in the demand, again energy efficiency is needed. For that, there are two significant measures. One is the Eco Nivas Sanhita, and the second is Residential Energy Conservation Building Code. Within the Eco Nivas Sanhita, there is the Residential Envelope Transmittance Value. It can be asked in prelims. The Residential Envelope Transmittance Value, RETV, it's a metric which measures the amount of heat transfer through the residential building. How much heat is transferred through the residential building. Now, the article recommends that we should use sustainable building materials, where the energy efficiency of the residential building will be improved because of the material. Usually, there are these popular materials, that is AAC blocks, autoclaved aerated concrete blocks, red bricks, fly ash and monolithic concrete. But usually AAC blocks, they have the lowest RETV across all climatic conditions. Therefore, they have the lower embodied energy. Therefore, they will be more environmental friendly. But the monolithic concrete construction is usually favored, because it takes less time to construct using this material, plus the quality, strength, etc. they are better, but they have the higher embodied energy. Therefore, they are not leading to as energy efficient residential buildings. Therefore, we can go for better and more sustainable materials while constructing residential buildings to improve energy efficiency. Thank you.